Tea started like any other evening in our small town. My girlfriend of 5 years, 23 years old at the time, and I decided to take one of our usual backroads joyrides. It was the kind of simple, carefree fun that had become our routine. We grabbed a rack of beer and invited my younger brother, 18 months, and his lady friend to come along for the ride. I had 3 or 4 beers, nothing crazy, and decided to call it a night early. I had an early shift the next morning and didn't want to overdo it. They dropped me off at home, promising to keep the night alive for a while longer. I kissed her goodbye, expecting her back in an hour or two, then climbed into bed. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up with my bladder reminding me it exists. As I shuffled to the bathroom, I noticed her side of the bed was still empty. I glanced at my phone. No texts, no missed calls. I shot her a casual "Where are you?" message and went back to bed. When my alarm went off the next morning, she was there. She had snuck back in sometime in the early hours, and to my surprise, she seemed unusually chipper. She woke me up with morning sex, acting like everything was perfectly normal. I didn't think much of it at the time. I showered, kissed her goodbye, and headed to work like it was just another day. Fast forward a few weeks, and life threw us a curveball. She was pregnant. My heart raced when she told me. We weren't planning for kids, and I'd always been vigilant about using protection. But accidents happen, right? We chalked it up to a defective condom. After some emotional conversations, we agreed we weren't ready for a baby. It was an incredibly difficult decision, but we decided to terminate the pregnancy. I took time off work to support her. I drove her to the clinic, paid for the procedure, and spent days caring for her afterward. I thought I was being a good partner. Looking back now, I realize I was nothing more than a blind fool. Years passed, and life moved on. We eventually broke up for reasons unrelated to this story. At least, I thought they were unrelated. Then one night, everything unraveled. I was catching up with my younger brother over beers when her name came up. It was casual at first, just reminiscing about the past, but as he spoke, his tone shifted, and he started stumbling over his words. His face turned red, and I knew something was up. I pressed him, and after a moment of hesitation, he cracked. He admitted that the night they dropped me off, they'd taken his lady friend home shortly after. That left just the two of them driving aimlessly. One thing led to another, and she parked the car. And then it happened. He said she initiated it, but he didn't stop her. He didn't even try. He said it like it was supposed to make it better, but it didn't. Hearing those words, I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The betrayal didn't stop there. That pregnancy we'd mourned and terminated, it wasn't mine. I spent days trying to wrap my head around it all. At first, I wanted to believe it wasn't true. But then, a mutual friend confirmed the story years later. That night had haunted my brother too, and apparently, it wasn't something he'd managed to keep quiet. I felt so many things at once: anger, humiliation, heartbreak, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I'd spent years with this woman. I'd loved her. I'd trusted her. I'd paid for a mistake that wasn't even mine to begin with. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. There were cracks in our relationship that I ignored because I wanted to believe the best in her. I wanted to believe we were solid. But hindsight is cruel, and the truth doesn't care about how much you loved someone. I've since cut ties with both her and my brother. Some things can't be forgiven, and this was one of them. People often talk about heartbreak, but this was something else. It wasn't just the loss of love. It was the loss of trust, of family, of the belief that I knew the people closest to me. Now, years later, I've moved on. But every now and then, I think back to that night and wonder how I could have been so blind.